After months of fighting, Russia finally managed to break through. Pokrovsk was on the verge of falling. Russian infiltrated troops had surrounded the city, and the vital logistical artery for Ukraine in the Donetsk region was about to fall. Except it wasn't. Ukraine had other ideas. With a devastating search-and-destroy tactic, Ukraine just took the fight right back to Russia. Pokrovsk is liberated. Russia has lost everything as the army it created to take the city has collapsed under Ukraine's might. On August 17th, the Kyiv Post reported the news, noting that Ukraine's defense forces had managed to score several major successes in the Donetsk region over the weekend. One of those successes was expelling Russia's soldiers from Pokrovsk, with the weeks prior also seeing Ukraine retake several key settlements near the crucial city that Russia was using to stage its assault. While Russian President Vladimir Putin walked down a red carpet in Alaska with US President Donald Trump en route to a meeting where the two leaders would discuss what Russia's idea of peace in the Ukraine war would look like, Ukraine was taking matters into its own hands. All the leverage Putin had in Donetsk is now gone. The goal of the summer offensive shattered. But how did we even get here? It all starts with Pokrovsk, which has long been considered one of the most important cities in the Ukraine war. Ever since Putin switched the majority of his focus into taking Donetsk, Russia's taking Pokrovsk has been key to his strategy. And it's easy to see why. As Euronews reported back in September 2024, when the assaults on Pokrovsk began in earnest, the city means everything to Ukraine in Donetsk. It's hard to overestimate the importance of Pokrovsk for both Ukraine and for Russia, Euronews wrote at the time. Pokrovsk has been one of the strongholds of Ukraine's eastern front. Its geographic location not only makes it arguably one of the most important logistics hubs, but it's also scarily close to what has been seen as Ukraine's deep rear. It has a good point. Pokrovsk, being toward the edge of the Donetsk region, is both good and bad for Ukraine. On the good side, the city has served as a logistical hub for Ukraine's defenders in the vital eastern region. Supplies, troops, ammunition, weapons, they've all flowed through Pokrovsk, allowing Ukraine to reinforce its fortifications as needed to deal with Russia's constant ground assaults and shelling of both the city and the settlements surrounding it. For Russia, the city holds as much symbolic importance as it does a strategic one. Taking Pokrovsk means causing severe problems for the Ukrainian supply chain in Donetsk. Without the city, Ukraine's supplies and soldiers have to take longer and more dangerous routes to reach their positions on the ever-evolving front line. Time is always a factor in war. A delay of a day or two could mean that a position that would otherwise have been defended falls. That's the situation Russia wants to create with its control of Pokrovsk. But we can't ignore the large symbolic significance that Putin and his soldiers place on this city. As Reuters pointed out in a July 23rd article, Pokrovsk is often called the gateway to Donetsk by the Russian media, and with very good reason. It lies just 12.4 miles away from the Donetsk administrative border, which is the line that Russia needs to reach if it's to claim full control of Donetsk, as it says it has in neighboring Luhansk. Reach that border and Putin gets the leverage he needs to reinforce his argument that Donetsk should be handed over to Russia in peace negotiations. Right now, Russia holds 70% of the region. From Pokrovsk, Russia would also gain a platform from which it can drive north, allowing it to tackle the other Donetsk fortress cities of Slovyansk and Kramatorsk. And if those fall, the logic goes, Russia can then switch its focus to central Ukraine. Inch by inch, day by day, Russia will be able to draw closer to Kyiv if Pokrovsk falls. And the city was practically under Russia's control just a few short days ago. On July 22nd, the Kyiv Independent reported that it was official. Russia's soldiers had managed to breach Ukraine's defense lines and had finally entered the city of Pokrovsk. The outlet spoke to a Ukrainian soldier who confirmed, under condition of anonymity, that Russia had indeed gotten into the city. However, the soldier said it wasn't clear at that point if Russia's soldiers had managed to dig in and create a fortified position. Deep State, which provided the information on which the Kyiv Independent reported, said that Russia had managed the breakthrough by attacking from the direction of the village of Zverova. The Russian strategy had worked. Take the villages and settlements surrounding Pokrovsk, launching attacks from each until the line broke. Ukraine had to respond quickly. A seek-and-destroy mission began, with Deep State reporting. Russian units attempted to entrench themselves and gain control over defenders of Ukraine. Some of them are being killed, others are still being hunted. The search and destruction of these groups is still ongoing. Russia hadn't taken Pokrovsk yet. But this was big. Its soldiers were inside the city limits and fighting for their lives. Ukraine may have been able to stop them in their tracks back in July, but the city was breached, and Russia had its route in. If Putin has shown us anything during the Ukraine war, it's that when Russia senses an opening, its tactic is to pour more soldiers to split that opening wider. Except that's not quite what happened. Whether surprised by the sheer ferocity of the Ukrainian response and its army's seek-and-destroy methods, or simply being unable to force a larger opening due to being bottlenecked, Russian forces didn't stream into Pokrovsk in massive numbers. Instead, Russia had to be subtler than that. Infiltration was the name of the game. Russia needed to keep the break in Ukraine's line open as it sent small contingents of troops into Pokrovsk. Those soldiers weren't tasked with assaulting Ukraine's defenders directly, as has so often been Putin's tactic during the war. There was no human wave assault, no meat grinder into which to feed hundreds of soldiers. Sabotage was the goal of these small contingents of troops. While we don't know the exact orders those saboteurs received, we can assume they were tasked with destroying as much military and civilian infrastructure as they could. Damage to Pokrovsk amounts to damage to Ukraine's defenders, but the saboteurs were not successful. Russia likely wasn't sending its elite spies into Pokrovsk after breaking through. It would be sending regular soldiers, many of whom were still wet behind the ears after only being part of the 110,000 troops Putin dedicated to the summer offensive against Pokrovsk for a couple of months. By August 15th, the Kyiv Independent reported that Ukraine's 7th Corps of the Airborne Forces had officially cleared Pokrovsk of all Russia's sabotage groups. Ukrainian soldiers were still operating in the city, the Corps said. Even civilians were able to move around. Granted, travel was highly restricted, but Ukraine still controlled routes in and out of the city that it could use. Russia's infiltration was already failing, though there was still one problem. Russian soldiers remained in Pokrovsk. That brings us to August 17th. The work is done. The Russians have officially been kicked out of Pokrovsk. According to Ukraine, there are no more infiltrators or groups of soldiers, as Russia's breakthrough has been reversed and Putin's forces are right back to where they started from. Scratch that, they're now in a worse position. Ukraine confirmed the complete liberation of Pokrovsk via a telegram post published by Ukraine's general staff. The occupiers continue to surrender, the report says. Units of the 19th Army Corps operating in the Donetsk region captured 6 Russian servicemen just in the last day. Also this week, the forces of the 7th Airborne Assault Corps and related units cleared the city of Pokrovsk of enemy groups and single occupiers. Cleared the city. Putin will hate to read that. A city that was so close to being in his grasp, one that means so much to his claims that Russia should control Donetsk, has slipped through his fingers right as it seemed that he had it. Pokrovsk is liberated once more, and the Ukrainian front line has been restored to where Ukraine needs it to be. However, we just made mention of Russia being in an even worse position than it was before its troops broke into Pokrovsk. That wasn't a subtle hint. Along with being booted out of the key city, Russia's soldiers have also been forced out of several other settlements surrounding Pokrovsk, as the General Staff explains. From August 4th to 16th, as a result of joint actions of units and subdivisions of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the National Guard of Ukraine, which are part of the 1st Corps of the Azov National Guard, the following settlements have been cleared in the Donetsk region: Pruzhka, Rybizne, Novovodiana, Petrovka, Vesela, Zoloty Kolodiaz, proclaims Ukraine's report. There are a couple of key takeaways here. First, remember the date of the Kyiv Independent report that confirmed Russian troops had broken into Pokrovsk. It was July 22nd, in case you've forgotten. The dates Ukraine's general staff shares demonstrates that Ukraine's counterattack lasted for more than a day or two. It was a concerted effort that saw it retake several settlements surrounding Pokrovsk, as well as eliminating Russia's soldiers from the city. What we likely see here is Ukraine pulling off a counterattack that allowed it to encircle the few Russian troops and sabotage groups that entered Pokrovsk. The logic is simple. Take the settlements that contributed to the breakthrough, and you eventually close the gap that Russia has created. Russia's soldiers and saboteurs were trapped. Ukraine eliminated them. That brings us to our second takeaway, which is that it looks like Ukraine managed to use Russia's own tactics against it. We mentioned earlier that Russia has been taking the settlements around Pokrovsk so it can launch attacks from multiple directions. The settlements Ukraine liberated outside of the city itself were likely part of that plan. Instead, Ukraine turned Russia's assaults on their head, retaking the territory Russia had gained before encircling Russia's infiltrators, as we just described. Anything you can do, Ukraine can do better, Mr. Putin. There's one more piece of bad news that Russia has to absorb from an August that has seen it fall from the heights of finally entering the city Putin has wanted for years to losing its grip on that city and the surrounding settlements. The Russian losses were massive. We'll allow Ukraine's general staff to provide you with the roundup via its telegram post. In general, as a result of active actions in the operational zone of the Corps, the enemy suffered significant losses in manpower. According to the data, as of August 16th, they are irretrievable, 910 people, medical, 335 people, prisoners, 37 people. Add it all up and you get a total of 1,282 Russian casualties in a single region of Ukraine over the course of about 12 days. That's about 106 casualties per day, all caused by Ukraine's brilliant counterattacking strategy. And to rub salt into the wound of Putin's Pokrovsk defeat, it's not just soldiers that Russia has lost. Equipment went the way of the dodo as well. A lot of it. 8 Russian tanks fell to Ukraine's Pokrovsk counterattack. So did 6 armored vehicles, a multiple-launch rocket system, 18 guns of other types, 103 automobiles and motorcycles, and 91 of Russia's unmanned aerial vehicles. This wasn't just a victory for Ukraine. It was a demolition of the Russian soldiers who dared set foot into Pokrovsk. So how did Ukraine manage to pull all of this off? Ukraine used a secret weapon. We'll tell you what that was in a moment. First, let's hone in on the strategy Ukraine employed. We've touched on the tactical side already, with the taking of settlements between August 4th and 16th likely being key to Ukraine finally pushing Russia's infiltrators out of Pokrovsk. We've also mentioned the seek and destroy tactics that Ukraine used. Ukraine's 1st Azov Corps was one of the groups involved in the seek and destroy mission, though it dubbed it search and strike. It amounts to the same thing, and the 1st Azov Corps was happy to share just how effective it's been when playing its role in Ukraine's liberation of Pokrovsk. In a Facebook post on the Ukrainian General Staff page, the Corps noted that they had killed 271 Russian soldiers, caused 101 sanitary losses, and achieved what appears to be 13 full surrenders. The Corps also posted numbers showing that it played a huge part in Russia's equipment losses, with the highlight being 37 vehicles being taken out by this one brigade. Entire settlements were cleared by the 1st Azov Corps. Euromaidan Press provides more details about the search and strike tactic the 1st Azov Corps implemented, along with the other Ukrainian units that helped to liberate Pokrovsk. In the Corps' case, it deployed a reconnaissance company to scout out Russia's troop positions and provide the intel needed to make Ukraine's attacks more effective. That's the search portion of the strategy. With the Russian positions identified, the strike portion came next. Artillery blasted the Russian positions with shells as unmanned systems infiltrated and attacked any Russians found. Notice that we said unmanned systems and not unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs. While it's likely that the UAVs played a substantial role in the liberation of Pokrovsk, they're now responsible for up to 80% of all deaths in the Ukraine war after all. They weren't the only unmanned systems Ukraine deployed in Pokrovsk. There was another type of drone in play, one that proved itself so important in Pokrovsk that it may just be a game changer that Ukraine can deploy to retake other occupied territories. The secret weapon? Ground drones. But these weren't just any old ground drones. They were unmanned systems that were able to go in firing because Ukraine has managed to equip them with guns. That's according to Euromaidan Press, which reported on August 16th that Ukraine's 93rd Mechanized Brigade had confirmed the use of these terrifying drones in the liberation of Pokrovsk. Ground-based robotic assault systems were used to liberate Ukrainian territories, the brigade said in a Telegram post. The robots, equipped with machine guns, fired at the enemy concentration, approaching practically at close range. This is far from the first time that we've seen Ukraine deploy ground drones in its fight against Russia, but up until this point, they've often been seen as support units. Ground drones can carry supplies to the front lines, for example, or be used to evacuate injured troops. Those sorts of drones have already proven themselves so useful that Hlib Kanavsky, who is the director of procurement at the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, confirmed back in May that Ukraine plans to build around 15,000 ground drones by the end of 2025. But those in Pokrovsk were different from the drones we've mostly seen in them. They came packing machine guns, and Russia's soldiers weren't able to do a thing about them. Writing for the Lowy Institute, David Kirichenko explains what the emergence of these types of drones means for Ukraine. The vision of frontline commanders is to deploy robots across the front, for these ground robots to take the greatest risk and most dangerous missions, Kirichenko writes. In other words, Ukraine's ground drones are being built to take the place of human soldiers who would have been needed just a few short months ago to complete the types of search and strike operations we've just seen in and around Pokrovsk. These robots have already been tackling some of Ukraine's logistical burden. Though important, they weren't units capable of killing Russians without putting Ukraine's soldiers in harm's way. This new breed of ground drone is different, and it gives Ukraine a ton of options. Right now, sheer manpower is one of the biggest advantages that Russia has over Ukraine. According to Global Firepower, which ranks nations based on their military strength annually, Russia has an active army of 1.32 million people versus Ukraine's 900,000. Russia also comes out on top in reserves with 2 million versus Ukraine's 1.2 million and has about 150,000 more paramilitary soldiers. If we move our focus to the long term, Russia also has about 875,000 more people reaching military age every year, as well as over 33.4 million more people who Global Firepower classifies as fit for service. The Russian manpower advantage is huge, which is why Putin has been able to rely on human waves and hugely attritional strategy so far. Russia's leader is callous. He knows that it doesn't matter how many of his soldiers die because Russia has plenty more where they came from. As long as those soldiers are killing Ukrainians as well, even if Russia is losing many more than Ukraine, the end result will be what Putin wants. Ukraine's defenses crumbles. The emergence of ground drones packing machine guns changes all of that. Right now, Ukraine is short between 50,000 and 100,000 trained infantry, as the International Institute for Strategic Studies highlighted in February. These manpower issues aren't going away, and the shortages are being felt in the empty trenches in the Donetsk region, and they likely played a role in Russia's managing to break through into Pokrovsk in the first place. With ground drones that are actually capable of fighting, Ukraine is now able to deploy troops that aren't traditional at all. They are soldiers on the ground who can both take and defend territory without Ukraine having to worry about losing people if those units are destroyed. People are still needed to operate these drones. However, Euromaidan Press points out that those people are now in far better positions than they would have been if they had assaulted a Russian unit themselves. But at least that team, lodged in a fighting position, potentially kilometers from the fighting, is relatively safe from Russian attacks, as it controls its ground robots via wireless radio or fiber optic cable, the outlet says. Ukraine is now able to deliver death from a distance, both on the ground and in the air, thanks to its innovative drones. While the latter are great for setting traps, destroying equipment and reconnaissance, the former can retake territory by scouting for Russian trenches and attacking them when they're found. Search and strike, indeed. Liberation doesn't mean complete victory in Pokrovsk. Stabilization operations continue around the city as Ukraine tries to consolidate the territory it's retaken, while Russia presumably regroups for a renewed assault. But now Russian soldiers who enter Pokrovsk know that the city isn't there for the taking. Ground drones armed with machine guns await. Ukraine's search and strike strategy is a perfect counter. If Putin isn't careful, the summer offensive that was supposed to give Russia so much leverage in peace negotiations is only going to prove that Russia isn't anywhere near as close to winning the Ukraine war as he likes to claim. All of this has happened while Ukraine continues its deep strikes into Russia, further weakening Putin's war machine. Russia just found out that they're losing the UAV war as well as the ground drone war, and it's far too late for Russia to do anything about it. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more videos covering the latest from Pokrovsk and the Donetsk region. And thank you as always for watching.